What's up guys, my name is John, and welcome to Glow Up Gaming. I've been playing Warparty for a while now. I just found it on Steam, bought it, and I loved it. So I'm here now to give you a couple of tips to get better at the game if you haven't been doing them already. Number one for me, and as boring as it sounds, you have to realize that technical skill is a must. Go to the settings menu and learn your controls. Because honestly, all RTS games rely on hotkeys and finger spamming. And I'm not saying that you gotta be, like the Korean pro gamer level of good, or especially this level of good.
There's a reason. Oh my God, no he's not. No he isn't.
But you should be able to confidently switch between your units, your bases, and your unit production. Great thing about Warparty is that the controls are all universal between the races. So from the builder menu, you have B for your build, you have Q for your houses to control your population, W for the farms for the two races that have farms, E for your storage huts, you have A for your barracks, S for your stables or your second tier units. You have Z for your watchtowers, that goes for two of the races that can build it. X will always be your smithery to upgrade your units. And from your settlements, you have Q to produce villagers, W to respawn your hero, and A to upgrade your settlement. Here's also a mini tip, if you didn't know already, is that you can control group your buildings so you don't have to keep going back to your base every time you want to make a unit. You're going to make a lot of units, you're going to be producing them all the time, and that means you're going to be going back and forth, and you just don't want to do that. Resource gathering is a lot of fun. It's an essential part of the game, but make sure you don't focus too much on it. Spend a couple of seconds looking at your base, figuring out what your next move is, and queue up the units for it, and then move on. Once you start producing units and you start upgrading, use those units, even as little as you have of them, to attack, defend the enemy base, and soon you'll start to see that one of the best resources in the game is destroying your enemy's resources and controlling theirs. One of the resources that may not seem as obvious to you when you're just beginning the game is the resource of time. You have to manage your time correctly. You can manage your food, you can manage your crystals. Think of time just as another resource, because you want to get things done at a certain times so you could stay relevant with the enemy basically. Now if you wait too long to start disrupting your enemy, you're going to start seeing the large units come out like mammoths and T-Rexes, and then eventually you're going to see the restart button. Another tip for you is that if you haven't noticed already when you play the game, the AI really isn't the best, especially when the units go into combat. You will see that once you attack move, your units will get misplaced. Sometimes your healers and your archers are in the front lines when that's, it's common sense. You don't want them to be there. As far as I know, there's no hotkey to reorganize them, so you just gotta do it yourself. It's annoying, but it does make a big difference. So the easiest way to reorganize them is by double clicking a unit, therefore selecting their type and just putting them back in the place where they belong. Another tip for you is to bring villagers to secure areas like power checkpoints or resources, and make sure you bring them with your army too, because you don't want them to just wander off alone and die. The way you secure them is by building the good old watchtowers, and you got 2 out of the 3 races that can build them, and man, watchtowers are scummy. I hate dealing with them, and thankfully so does the enemy. So when you're building the watchtowers, be sure to build them next to some resources so you can use your worker to switch between the two, gathering resources and eventually to repair their watchtower when it gets attacked, just so you're maximizing their value. Also, a mini tip here is to don't overcommit to securing an area, because when an enemy attacks, eventually, they're going to bring their whole army, and you just can't defend all that without bringing your whole army in either. Unless you're trying to commit fully to securing an area, it's sometimes better to just let it go. One of the most important tips, in my opinion, is to always be prepared to migrate your workers, because resources in Warparty are finite, especially crystals. You have 2 races that can build farms, so you don't have to just rely on berries. You can build in near your main base or wherever you want, But for crystals, they're going to run out, and you're going to have to migrate somewhere else, somewhere farther from your base. And one of the worst positions to find yourself in, just like you see in the video, is that you've just run out of crystals, and then your enemy decides to attack at that very moment. And then you just stuck because you don't have any units to produce to defend your base, and there's no easy way for your units to run back to your base without them causing a huge amount of damage. One combat tip that I have is to focus fire your units. Like I said, when you click attack, your units are going to be controlled by the AI and just attack to the closest thing near them. Maximize their value by just selecting their unit type and right-clicking an enemy. You know, if you play the game, that there's 3 types of units. There's the infantry, there's ranged, and then there's beast. And it's basically like playing Pokemon, except there's only 3 types, so it's a lot easier to remember. So the rules are that infantry is good against beast, ranged are good against infantry, beast are good against ranged. So make sure that when you get into combat, you are utilizing all that value, selecting their types, shift attacking the enemy, so to queue them up. Mostly what I like to do is just to get the rangers and use them to snipe the healers. But you know, just be sure that your units are focusing the right type of enemies, because 50% more damage is a lot. It really is a lot. It'll make a world of difference. It took me a while to figure out whether or not upgrading was worth it in the start, but I found that you should save your upgrading till in the late game. That way you could get more buck for your bang, because that's when you're going to be start mass producing your units, and that's when you're going to be seeing most of the value come out. So instead of upgrading, using your resources to do that, make sure you spend that time to build workers, build early game units, and most importantly, upgrade your settlement. You know, that's going to allow you to start building higher tier towers, producing higher tier units, and having those higher tier units, they're just far better than upgraded units, in my opinion. To get that extra added boost to your early game resources, use your units to your hero specifically to kill the dinos and get the small food boost, because even that small boost can make the difference of, you know, utilizing your resource of time. In the end, you know, it all adds up and it will count for something. And I believe one of the most important tips I could mention is to always make sure that you're producing something. See in my replay that I'm really never just focusing on one thing at a time for more than just like 15 seconds. Everything is pretty well automated. You're just really like the manager telling them what to do, but you don't need to be micromanaging everything. And especially if you have the buildings control grouped to your hotkeys, you know, it's just 2 clicks of a button and you can queue up units. The H hotkey will always switch between your bases, so that's also very useful. So it's time to go through some quick tips. They mentioned this in the tutorial, but it's best to not rely on just one building to produce military units. Build 2, build 3, build 4, build 5. You know, I always go with 2. That's what I'm comfortable with. I go 2 of the barracks, 2 stables, and usually 1 of the higher tier buildings until I can afford to mass produce those type of units as well. Be sure to let your hero tank watchtowers, because they have a tremendous amount of HP compared to your normal units. Build medics, because medics, they really are overpowered, and that's a huge way to save resources. When you're playing the campaign, and you know, playing the campaign is great because it helps you learn, you know, how to play the game and gets you familiar with the hotkeys. I definitely do recommend it, or at least playing the AI skirmish before you play with other players. When you're playing campaign, it's best to just sometimes ignore the objective. Sometimes you have to complete some of the objective to get to the part where you can actually reach the enemy base. But sometimes it's best to just destroy the enemy's base and then carry on with the objective. It's easier that way, just so your enemy doesn't upgrade to their higher tiers and start building large units like mammoths and T-Rexes. And last but not least, for the quick tips is, you'll notice that the sage voice,
"We have destroyed their camp, and the berserkers are gone. This area is free."
It's pretty funny. It just doesn't work for me, and every time I hear it I just laugh, so try not to laugh at his voice. Alright guys, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video, and leave a like if you found any of these tips useful, and if you didn't, leave a dislike. My name is John, this is Glow Up Gaming. Subscribe for new videos on how to get good at video games. See you guys later.